The shipping crate that Takumi Nishijo called home was perched silently on the roof of an old building in Shinsen. Sena Aoi was coming here now for the second time. The first had been a few days prior, when she'd run into Takumi and Kozue at Center Street. She'd secretly followed him home. That's how she'd found this place.
Sena-san, やめた方がいいと思うのだ。泥棒さんはね、コズピ嫌いなの。にゅ。
それならどうしてついてきた？
Sena spoke coldly, without even looking back at Kozue. Sena had come here to sneak into Takumi's room. Takumi Nishijo wasn't normal. You could say that again. After talking to him several times, that was the conclusion she'd reached. He was different from normal gigalomaniacs, like Sena and Kozue. Either the strength of his delusions were incredibly intense, or he was receiving some sort of artificial support. Either way, his very existence seemed like it was unstable somehow. Something about him bothered Sena a lot. She was looking for a man named Hatano, and it was possible that Takumi Nishijo was connected to him somehow. She had no way of being sure. But if there was any chance, even a small one, she wouldn't rest until she'd ruled it out with her own eyes. As long as she kept doing that, she'd find her target eventually. That's what Sena believed. There was a padlock on the door. Sena gave a little snort and brought her down her D-sword. She'd already real booted it. Well, yeah. Better than any lockpick, I suppose. The padlock shattered easily.
Takumi-san が帰ってきたら怒られちゃうよ。
Sena had already seen that Takumi had left school with two friends, heading in the direction of the station. And even if he did find out, she didn't care. Sena would do anything to achieve her goal, even if that meant making somebody mad or having them call the cops. I mean, what are the cops gonna do? What sword? Like, that's it. That's all she has to say. She opened the door and went inside. Oh boy. You don't get to judge, Sena. You're breaking and entering. You don't get to judge anything you see in here, alright? The place was like a garbage dump. Sena couldn't help but wince and give a small moan.
汚いね。
なんで楽しそうなんだ、小杖。
靴は脱いだ方がいいのかな。
Sena sighed and went inside the room without bothering to remove her shoes.
お人形さんいっぱいなのら。たくみさんって変態さんだったんだ。すごいな。
Oh boy. Sena ignored Kozue, who seemed strangely impressed for some reason, and went over to the computer. She turned on Takumi's PC, and while she waited for it to boot up, she ran her eyes across the contents of the desk. Her eyes narrowed as she picked up an old sheet of essay paper. Kozue had been looking over Sena's shoulder. She was jumping up and down with delight.
やっぱりたくみさんがその目誰の目の人だったのら。
God.
コズピーはパンパカパーンだったぽーん。
Sena, however, seemed much less interested in the essay than Kozue. She flipped it over to see if anything was written on the other side. Oh boy, is there. Suddenly, her eyes went wide with shock. What she saw there was... The scribblings of a lunatic.
IR2 だって。
Sena was gritting her teeth so loud you could physically hear it. Her expression was even angrier than usual, and her hands shook with rage as she held the essay.
そうか。西条。IR2 を生み出した張本人か。
I don't know what that is. Am I supposed to know what that is? I hope it's not something I forgot, because it very well could be. Her voice was quiet. Then I crumpled up the essay into a ball and crushed it with her fist. I got up and left the nurse station, and now I was wandering around the hospital. My brain still felt like it was full of fog. I decided not to think about what I'd just seen. I'm trying to remember. Oh, that's right, the doodle. Somehow, I ended up at the stairwell. Misumi was there, standing in front of the window.
どうしたタク?
It's like the last thing that happened. You'd think I'd remember, and
顔
yet
色も悪いし。
it takes me a moment.
顔色悪いのはいつもか。もしかして
Rude.
走って探してたのか? そりゃバテもするぜ。無茶するね、お前って。
I wiped away the sweat and tried my best to pretend I was okay.
リミと岸本、見つけたぜ。
But I couldn't see the two of them anywhere. Then, for some reason, he pointed out the window.
あそこだ。
I took a moment to catch my breath from walking over to the window. Before walking over to the window. From the window, I could see the outpatient building next to us. The outpatient and inpatient areas were two separate buildings. There was a walkway that led between them, but the two were a distance apart. The inpatient building was a few stories taller, and from the stairwell, you could just look down on the outpatient building's roof. There was a garden there, with a planter filled with red flowers. There was a space for patients to relax. Rimi and Ayase were standing in the middle of the garden, facing each other. Ayase was wearing her pajamas. They seemed to be discussing something. The two of them didn't know each other, right?
なんか妙にシリアスに見えねえか。
They seemed to be glaring at one another. Suddenly, Ayase took a step forward and slapped Rimi across the face. Even from here, I could see that she'd given it her full strength. Now Ayase was walking away from Rimi. If she was heading toward the connecting corridor, she might come back to her room.
今
Well, that's...
ビンタしたよな。
I nodded. Rimi was standing there, alone. She wasn't moving.
あの二人ってトラブル抱えてんのか?
I hadn't earned anything like that at all. Misumi suggested we pretend we'd never seen it. I eagerly agreed. We decided to leave Rimi where she was and head to Ayase's room. I was feeling a lot better than I had a bit ago. The gaze of God was gone. That awful feeling had disappeared like it never happened.
Oh.
Misumi let out a soft gasp. He was walking ahead of me. I looked up and saw Ayase heading towards us. She was looking down at her feet. She seemed sick and pale and was having trouble walking. Her expression seemed dark, too. We ended up running into each other right in front of her hospital room.
よ、岸本さん。
Ayase looked up in surprise at his cheerful greeting. And when she saw me, she gave me a smile that somehow made it look like she was about to cry. Why was she smiling just now? Because she'd heard about the mess at Ofront and how much of a fool I'd made of myself? Or did she just like me? If it was the former, that was incredibly depressing.
俺たち君のお見舞いに来たんだよね。つうか岸本さん、パジャマ姿も可愛いじゃん。
How long did it take for him to make it weird? Like 5, 7 seconds? That feels like a new record. He was already using his pickup artist skills. Is that what that is? Do people like that? Is that charming? Talk about being fast on your feet.
入って
Ayase, for her part, wasn't nearly as cold as she'd been to him before. She opened the door and invited us in. She didn't mention the fact that she just slapped Remy on the roof at all. Why would she do that? I wasn't sure whether she was just hiding it or if she'd just totally gotten over it in this short a time. As always, it was impossible to tell what ISA was thinking. Or, alternatively, third option, you don't just randomly bring up stuff like that to people to everyone you come across. That's just, it's like that's not how human interaction works. Misumi gave me a little thumbs up, making sure ISA didn't see. He was panting a little as he went into the room. I followed him. I'd wanted to go home with Remy, but I didn't have the courage to talk to her right now. I didn't know why it had happened, but if somebody had slapped her that hard, she must be feeling pretty bad, and I didn't have the words to make her feel better. ISA sat down on the bed. Misumi sat down next to her, somehow managing to even make it look natural in the process. I was astonished at his boldness. Seeing him go on the offensive was making me feel a little odd. ISA gave him a glance before fixing her gaze on me. As she stared at me, I didn't know what sort of look I should have on my face. In the end, I decided to look at my feet. Oh man, that's... Yep.
怪我どう？もうだいぶ良くなってるみたいだけど。なんか必要なものあるなら遠慮なく言ってよ。俺がすぐ買ってきてやるぜ。
He was staring at her hand. Evidently, he was looking for a chance to grab it. Oh my god. Dude. Should I not be here?
あ、小説とか読む？俺さ、グラジオール記黙示録詩編ってのが好きなんだけど。岸本さん、知ってる？
What? Like... Wow. Just wow.
Takumi.
She's ignoring him. ISA ignored Misumi's question. Instead, she said my name.
君はグラジオールの7騎士の一人よ。
あ？
There she goes again. Even after her failed suicide attempt, evidently ISA's personality hadn't changed.
やっぱり導きだったんだわ。君と私が出会ったのは。
She spoke softly, unemotionally. She began to share whatever crazy backstory she had in her head.
君の邪神はとても強大。だからこそ言うことなしなのよ。黒騎士としての素質は。君が今経験している苦しみはすべて神罰。大いなる意志による試練なの。それを乗り越えた時に理想度は召喚されるわ。君の手に必ず。そして現れるのよ。邪神の口説き大者。あらゆる崩壊を飲み込み、邪神王の身を砕くことのできる。同質にして異質なるものが。現実なの。グラジオールも理想度も。かまいたちがその証よ。実在しない現象は後世に言葉として残ることはないわ。知っている？語源を。かまえたち。それは理想度を意味しているの。信じて、匠。グラジオールを倒すのよ。一緒に。
I'm down. I vote yes. Gladiator. Now I remembered. Which one of these is green feels like yes. I want to agree. I want to yes, I agree. I'm gonna join your cause. I'm so on board with this. But turns into like an RPG style beat 'em up. That'd be really funny. I'd seen it when I first looked up the D-Sword. From what I'd read, the legend of the D-Sword originally came from old texts and apocrypha about the legend of Gladiael. Supposedly, anyway. Misumi silently stood up and walked toward me. As he passed by me, he put his hand on my shoulder.
俺、外に出てるわ。タグ、押し倒しちまえよ。俺の読みじゃ、岸本はお前に脈ありだぜ。
It's weirder when it's somebody else. You know what I mean? Like it's already awful when like he has those crazy delusions and it's I have to say it, but somehow it's weirder when someone else says it. Says these things. Stop. Oh, go away. He gave me a mischievous smile and left the room. I did green. I said I was never doing green, and I feel like I'm about to be reminded why I never picked green. It was now just me and ISA. I'm about to be... I'm gonna regret it. I made the mistake. I picked green. Silence. A moment ago, she'd been eagerly sharing her crazy talk with me, but now ISA was looking down at her lap, playing with the hem of her pajama shirt. Did I need to say something? But I hadn't understood anything about what she just said. No, I'd come here to visit somebody in the hospital. I could just ask about her condition, right? But if she was in the mental ward, that made it kind of awkward. Ugh, what was I supposed to do? Maybe I should have just left when Misumi did.
Takumi.
I froze when she called my name. I looked up and saw she was reaching her hands out to me. Oh my god, stop. Please don't do this right now. This is the last thing I need right now. I didn't know what she'd do to me if I refused, so I took a hesitant step toward her. Stop. Another step. Her hand touched mine. She grabbed me and pulled me close. Her gaze was still pointed downward. She was staring at my hand. I mean, this one's less like... You know what it's less like. This one's a little more wholesome. I don't hate this one. I don't hate where this is going. That wasn't true. It was only sheer chance that she'd survived. I didn't even know that if that flower bed was something I'd created or not. Okay, this does not go where I thought it would go, and that's a good thing. There's a bit of sadness in her voice. Was she crying? That's exactly what I was about to say. I felt something warm on my fingertip. I looked down to see what it was. No! No! You had it! It was so wholesome! We were so close. For some reason, ISA had put my index finger in her mouth. Why did she do a silly thing like that? I hate these sound bites too. I'm not a fan of it. I don't like it. Stop it. Make it stop. Please. Something soft and wet touched the tip of my finger. I could feel it squirming. Oh god, I really have to read this. I really... Oh my god. Am I just a prude? Is that what it is? Am I just a prude, or is this like... Am I justified in my cringe? I could feel it squirming around me, and then digging into the space between my finger and my nail. That's really gross, honestly. It's like the grossest part of the hand. What was going on? That's my question. I was confused, but it felt so good that I found myself just letting it happen. All she was doing was licking my fingers, so why did it feel so... This is not. No, stop. Oh my god. Suddenly, the pleasure turned into terrible pain. Ayase bit down hard on my fingertip. Well, why did she do that? That's not very nice. I thought she was going to rip my finger off. That's how bad the pain was. I tried to shake her off, and finally she let go. I really hope that this is, like, he had that delusion, and then this is her being like, hey, knock it off. I can see what you're doing. Stop it. Her seductive smile terrified me. I looked down at the finger she'd bitten. It was wet with her saliva. I could see the bite mark on it. Blood was pouring out. The blood wasn't red. What? It was black. So black.
その血の色が黒騎士の証よ。
Alright. That was, oh man, I really thought that was gonna be like a really wholesome thing, and then it wasn't. And then it stopped being that, and okay. I managed to make it through Ayase's bizarre conversations with the help of that delusion. I wasn't listening at all, but Ayase didn't seem to notice. She kept going on and on about Gladiale and Wicked Hearts, or whatever the heck else she was talking about.
すべてはお告げよ。すでに渋谷に集っているはずなの。7人の黒騎士は。
Yeah, again, okay, so I'm pretty sure I already kept count. So we have Ayase's got a sword, Senna's got a sword, Kozupi has a sword, and then Takumi kind of will have a sword probably. And then I think that's all. I really hope I'm not forgetting somebody, because that'd be embarrassing.
あとは全員が覚醒するだけ。急がないと世界は滅びるわ。
So we're missing 3. 3.
グラジオールの手によって。
3 Black Knights. Misumi and I both looked at each other and shrugged as we walked down to the first floor.
俺、もう岸本のことはどうでもよくなった。
Oh yeah, totally.
これまでの俺のポリシーはな、タク。可愛ければ何でも許してやるだった。けどそりゃ間違ってたよ。あんな強烈なテンパ、俺には受け止めらんねえよ。素直に梢ちゃんだけ狙うことにするぜ。
This guy sucks. This guy just sucks. I wasn't sure that was a good idea either. Misumi already had a girlfriend after all. Is that even true? Like
お前マジですごいな。岸本のあの脳みそお花畑の話、よく30分近くも聞いてられるよ。俺尊敬したぜ。俺は3分も持たなかった。この俺がだぞ。
Okay. Sad kitty face. I can't emulate that. I kept an eye on my surroundings as I walked, only occasionally responding to some comment Misumi made. When we got to the outpatient building lobby, I could see Rimi standing there, looking a little spaced out. Cold wind was rustling through her hair, and I could see that she lacked her usual cheerful demeanor. She was looking up at the night sky as if some big problem was on her mind.
Oi, Rimi!
When Misumi said her name, she turned to us with a sudden bright smile on her face and waved energetically at us. Seeing her smile made me relieved. I found myself running up to her. Of course, I couldn't hug her or anything like that, so running up to her was all I did.
Tak, 感動の再会だね。また会えて嬉しい。
どこほっつき歩いてたんだ？
病室、どこかわからなくて、あちこちさまよっちゃった。 ひどいよ。置いてくなんて。
She gave us a show of fake crying.
お前が先に行けって言ったんだろ。
そうだったね。で、岸本さんには会えた？
I nodded. Misumi was behind me, but I could tell he was grinning.
お前岸本にビンタされてただろ。
さて、何のことでしょう？
Evidently, Rimi had wanted to keep the fact that Ayase had slapped her a secret. I hadn't intended to bring it up. Misumi, read the room.
隠そうったって無駄だぜ。俺は一部始終を見てたんだ。某家政婦のようにな。
なんだ、バレてたのか。
She gave us an awkward look and then stared up into my eyes.
もしかして、タクも見てたの？
Yee.
そうだ、俺とタクで決定的瞬間をバッチリ見てた。
Don't tell her that. Okay, no more green. Green equals
なんだ、
not good.
それじゃあ
Do not
必
want.
死にごまかそうとしてたのがバカみたいじゃない。屋上に行ったらちょうど岸本さんがいたから、つい気になってたことを質問しちゃったの。そしたら機嫌損ねたみたい。
A question?
なんだよ、気になってたことって。
ね、あなたはもうずっとこの病院に入院してたんでしょって。
どういう意味だそれ。
岸本さんは退院なんてしてなかったの。
Oh my god. So you can say she's a ghost. Rimi seemed a little proud as she shared this information with us.
たまにしか学校に来なかったのもこの病院から無断で通ってたから。ライブだってそう。そしてニュージェネ事件は岸本さんが生み出した妄想を彼女自身の手で実行したものだったの。ファンタズムの歌詞の通りに事件を起こしたのよ。それによって注目を浴びるために。それが私の推理したニュージェネ事件の真相。さっき思い切って岸本さん本人にぶつけてみたんだ。そしたら叩かれちゃった。
That's not funny. Anybody'd get mad if you accused them of being a murderer with no evidence. Oh, but wait, Rimi hadn't gotten mad when I had accused her of being the new gen killer. I mean, she did though, didn't she? Wasn't she like, stop being mean or something?
でも私の推理は間違ってないはず。たく気をつけてね。岸本さんは異常だよ。
Well, I mean, we knew that. She's not a murderer, but we did know that. I couldn't believe Rimi would say such a thing. I thought I'd misheard it.
私は正常よ。
Oh my god. She could come in with a knife or something. I heard a clear voice call out. Oh my god. I was joking. I looked and saw Ayase standing at the entrance to the building, holding her D-sword.
すべては大いなる意志の導き。
She screamed, running at us with the blade.
おい、逃げようぜ。
たくどうしよう。
どうしようって。
グラジオールに栄光あ
There was clearly something wrong with Ayase. Oh, you don't say. She was heading closer and closer to us. Crap, I needed to run. I needed to run or she'd kill me. I was so panicked that I stumbled as I turned to flee. I landed face first on the ground.
諦めろ、リミ。
Oh wow, rude. Two of them fled, leaving me behind. I reached out toward them as they got smaller and smaller in my vision. Misumi, you suck. Even delusion Misumi sucks. There is no version of Misumi that does not suck. Okay. I turned around just in time to see Ayase standing above me, holding the D-sword high above her head.
Oi, Taku! Naniぼーっとしてんだ? 行くぞ!
Misumi was calling me. Rimi was standing right next to him, waving. I blinked and looked around me. There was no sign of Ayase. I wasn't hurt. I hadn't been stabbed. I thought she'd killed me. I never wanted to see Ayase like that in real life.
Taku! 早く来いって!
I quickly chased after them. Yeah, I'm starting to get the impression that the red. I mean, it feels really obvious now that I think about it, but I'm only just starting to get the impression that the red and green thing is like, green is weird and sexual, and then red is weird and violent. Which, of those two, I definitely have a clear preference. The three of us walked side by side through the outpatient lobby. This part of the hospital had evidently closed for the day, because there were only a few people there. There were, however, around 10 people gathered around the big LCD TV in the corner.
何かな?
また新しいニュージェネでも起きたんじゃね?
I sure hope not. Misumi whispered. I froze, but Rimi... She quietly gripped my hand. The warm feeling kept me from being any more scared. I could feel the tension in my heart melt away. Rimi was my support. Rimi gave me safety. Rimi would stay with me. Maybe I was being a little too optimistic, but having her by my side kept the terror just barely manageable. I'm so glad she was here.
なあ、二人とも来てみろよ.
Misumi had gone over to the TV and was beckoning to the two of us. The others, patients young and old, and even the nurses, were all glued to the screen. What was going on?
行ってみよう.
Rimi pulled me by the hand until we were close enough to see the TV. Nervously, I looked at it. And when I saw the text on what the text on the screen had said, I was stunned. Oh, snap. It was news about the arrest of the new gen killer.
繰り返しお伝えします。
Of course, their face is all covered up.
今日午後3時半ごろ、警視庁渋谷署はいわゆるニュージェネレーションの凶器と呼ばれる渋谷で発生した一連の殺人事件のうち、
Is that Sua? Is that Sua in one of some other detective? That's definitely not Bond. Hair's not crazy enough.
9月29日に起きた通称貼り付け殺人事件の容疑者を逮捕しました。殺人容疑で逮捕されたのは無職狛枝慎吾容疑者25歳です。容疑については先ほど渋谷署で行われた記者会見の通り、今のところ太田久さん殺害についてのみで、他の事件に関する容疑は今後追及していく構えです。狛枝容疑者は太田さん殺害については容疑を認めており、交際している女性が太田さんにしつこくつけ回され、カッとなって首を絞めた。しかしゾンビだったため死なず、貼り付けにして動きを止めた。
Like when they say zombie, that's not like some kind of slang I'm not familiar with, right? Human being, okay, yeah, a literal zombie, okay. Human being who's come back to life as a corpse. Their original personality is gone, and while their movements are slow, they are violent and attack other human beings. One theory says that zombies were originally people put into a coma with zombie powder and a dust made from a tetrodotoxin and wrongly buried alive. While underground, the lack of oxygen caused brain damage, leading to what we would now call a zombie-like state. Yeah, that's terrifying.
などと意味不明の供述をしています。警察の調べでは 狛枝容疑者には現在交際している女性がいないことが明らかになっており、薬物を摂取していた疑いもあるとみて捜査を進めています。
Is there something about that case that I'm forgetting? Why is the lack of a girlfriend relevant? I can see why whether or not drugs were involved to be relevant. Was there a detail about that case that I'm forgetting that would make that relevant? I'm baffled. I couldn't believe it. He didn't have a girlfriend. What? The TV was showing recorded footage of the suspect being taken away by car. There were media everywhere, the light from their camera bulbs making the screen flash. There was a jacket over the man's head. I couldn't see what he looked like at all.
タク、
He was wearing a blue shirt, and you could see his wrists. Rimi's hand gripped mine tighter. She whispered to me as she looked at the screen.
やっぱりタクは犯人なんかじゃなかったし、将軍っていう人も単なるいたずらだったんだよ。楠木さんだって間違った推理をしてただけ。ね、これで何もかも解決。もう見えない影なんかに怯えることないんだよ。
That's right. If they'd arrested somebody else for the crucified murder, then that meant I couldn't have been the one to do it. And I wasn't a sleepwalker, and I didn't have multiple personalities. This proved I was completely normal. I don't know about completely, but the first two things are true, yeah. Or they seem true. At the same time, it proved that I hadn't seen Rimi covered in blood there either. It hadn't been real. It had just been a delusion of mine. It was over. The nightmare I'd been dealing with for the past month was over. I didn't need to be jumping at shadows anymore. I didn't need to be scared of the gaze of God. I didn't need to be frantically looking for the D-sword. I didn't need to do any of that. So why? Why did something feel so wrong? The idea that Shogun had just been stalking me as some kind of prank didn't seem credible. Maybe I only thought that way because my sense of what was quote-unquote normal had been numbed for the past month. Also, the thing that happened on the roof, to me that's kind of the kicker, or at the very least one of them. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I'd set it on vibrate like I was supposed to, but I still couldn't take a phone call in the hospital. I let go of Rimi's hand and headed out the front door. I answered the phone. Hello, Shogun here.
Hi.
Please tell me it's Shogun. Not quite.
誰
I tensed up. Maybe it was that Torianse song again. I checked the name on the phone. But it was unlisted. I got a bad feeling and went to hang up, but... Oh my god. Shogun, you suck! Shogun, you're the worst. The voice on the other end was in terrible pain, but it was, without doubt, Nanami's voice.
ななみ
何なの？右手を返して。
What the fuck is happening? But the guy. Oh, okay. Yep. Let's talk. Yeah, let's talk about Garo Froggies now. Oh, oh man, the Garo Froggy specialty shop was called Totally Froggy. Get it? Because it's like Toad. Because it's a frog. Isn't that cute? Oh man, that's great marketing. Totally Froggy. Someone at some point must have thought it was a funny pun, but all it could elicit from Bond was a tired sigh. Oh, I feel like I'm losing my mind. There were 20 Totally Froggy stores all across the city, and they were supposedly building more. The one in Harajuku was the first one that had been built, and so it was a mecca for Garo Froggy fans. That was the one Bond had decided to visit, and he was quickly regretting it.
ま
なあ、ゆあちゃん。帰っていいか？
He whispered to Yua, who had accompanied him to the store and showed him where it was.
でも百瀬さんからゲロカエルンを買ってくるように頼まれてるんじゃ。
だってよ、おじさんだけ明らかに浮いてるからさ。
It was right on Takashita Street, and there were countless young people walking outside, having fun and talking to each other. Most of them were completely ignoring the shop. The inside was small and mostly devoid of people. There were only about 5 people there, including Bon and Yua, but all of them but Bon were teenage girls. A guy that looked like Bon walking down Takashita Street was with a teenage girl like Yua probably seemed like he was buying sex. And now here he was, buying her the mascot character that all the kids loved. What a perfectly stereotypical old pervert he was. Bon felt depressed. And...
なんか誰かに見られてるような気がするんだよな。いい年して自意識過剰かもしんねえが。
あ、それ私もです。最近誰かの視線を感じて、たまにすごく怖くなるんですよ。
なんで？俺だけじゃなかったか？ゆあちゃんの場合は心配だな。ストーカーに付け狙われてたりしたら。
そんな怖いこと言わないでください。
安心しな。そんな奴がいたら俺が逮捕してやるから。
Bon grinned, then turned to look at the Garo Froggy items on the shelf.
ところで、ゆあちゃんはここに来るのは何度目だ？
私も初めてです。
あんまり客がいねえようだが。静かなブームってやつなのか？
金曜日から日曜日にかけてはすごく混んでるらしいです。あ、つまり新作が発売されて週末の間だけですね。特に金曜日はものすごく並ぶらしくて、学生のために18時に販売開始なんですけど、噂だとその行列だけで竹下通りが埋め尽くされるとか。
週末だけね。ますます怪しいな。
Bon decided to grab 2 of last week's frog, the teary-eyed Garo Froggy, and take them to the register. Yua seemed to have decided not to buy any for herself. She simply followed behind him.
射精
The clerk was a rather dim-looking 20-something man with his hair dyed green. He even had pierced ears. If he wasn't at the register, it would have been hard to believe he worked in a store. Damn. He certainly didn't seem like the customer service type. The clerk was openly gawking at Yua and Bon.
娘さんへのプレゼントってやつっすか？
そうなんだよね。この子がどうしてもって言うから。まあ、たまには父親らしいことしてやらんとね。
Bon gave the clerk a friendly, awkward-looking grin. Yua had a surprised look on her face and quickly turned her head down, but Bon ignored her and continued to play the role of dad.
それより、このカエルに興味あるんだけど、ちょっと話聞かせてもらっていいかな？ゲコカエルンってそんなに人気あるの？
Gecko frogs.
っていうかゲロ帰るんすよ。バンバン人気あってやばいっす。
ああ、ゲプカエルンね。いつも週末に新作が出るんでしょ。
Gap Frogo. I like Gap Frogo.
ゲロ帰るんだって言ってんじゃんマジ。っていうか新作とかそういう言い方マジやめてよ。新ガエルだから。金土日と超並んでバンバン売れるんでマジやばいっすよ。マジでバンバン売れるっすから。バンバンっすよマジで。
Yua suddenly narrowed her eyes. Something in the way he was saying bang so many times felt strange. Why did he keep emphasizing it? It probably wasn't deliberate, but it felt like he was using it as an excuse to say Bond's name over and over again, and in a really rude way too.
これメイドインチャイナってラベルに書いてあるだけなんだけど、メーカーとかわかる？
Oh, that's funny.
はメーカーつうかゲロガエルにブランドとかねえし、ゲロガエルンはゲロガエルンじゃね？それで完結してね？おっさんマジウケんだけど。教えとくと、ゲロガエルンって作ってんじゃねえから。マジバンバン生まれてっから。
Is he okay? Bond felt like was about to bang his fist into the clerk's face if the conversation continued any longer. He paid and left the store.
店員の教育がなってねえな。今時の若い連中ときたらもうろくに会話もできやしねえ。大体なんだあの格好は。もう。
Is Bond, take a breath.
そ
Deep breath.
そうですね。あ、
Suddenly Yua stopped. She grabbed onto Bond's jacket to bring him to a halt as well.
見てください、バンさん。
どうした？
Yua pointed toward a parked truck. Several cardboard boxes were being unloaded from it at that very moment. They were being carried into the back of the Garo Froggy shop.
明日発売になるゲジカエルンの新作か。
Genji Froggy.
ゲロカエルンです。
I like his names better. I like. That's great.
ゆあちゃんよく見つけたな。偉い
Genji
ぞ。
Froggy.
いえ、そんな。
Normally the truck would have had a company name on it, but it was completely painted white. That's suspicious. The boxes, however, had a picture of Garo Froggy and the name of a company on them.
有限会社振興。聞いたことあるかい？
ありません。
となれば困った時のももちゃん頼みだな。
Bingo. Misumi and I parted ways at the station, and I headed back to the base. The whole time, it felt like I was wandering in a nightmare. I kept seeing Nanami's face flickering in and out of my mind, a different expression on it each time. Oh god, and he's gonna get up there and see the padlock slashed off his door. That's gonna be fun. Nanami was the type whose feelings always showed on her face. When she was mad, she'd puff out her cheeks. When she was happy, she'd grin so much it made you embarrassed to look at her. All those expressions in my memories came back to me one by one. It made me feel sick. What was that call? What did Nanami meant? Was the bandage I'd seen on her arm at school? Where was she now? At school, or had she gone home?
たく、ほら、前見て歩かないと転んじゃうよ。
With Rimi's help, I made it up to the roof.
あの
Red, please.
どうしたの？
これから実家に帰ってみようと思うんだ。
これから？急だね。
歩いても30分もかからないところなんだ。それで一緒についてきてほしい。
I felt so nervous as I asked her that I thought my heart would burst out of my chest. I was a little surprised that I was able to get the words out. I'd never been able to ask anyone for anything before.
嫌だよ。
Rimi rejected my offer.
私、行きたくない。
I'd never thought she'd refuse. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Rimi had always done whatever I'd wanted. She'd always been there to help me. She'd always been there to support me. So I thought she'd say yes to whatever I asked. But I realize now that I was silly for thinking she'd always say yes. That is pretty silly. I'd been arrogant. I'd treated her like a tool.
そう。
それに、
Rimi turned away from me. She wrapped her arms tight around her body.
それにタクも行かない方がいい。
それってどういう。
実家には戻らないで。
Her voice was clear and unhesitating, like she was giving me an order. I didn't understand. I didn't know what would make her say that. What look was on her face right now? I didn't understand.
わけがわからない。
あなたは何も知らなくていい。
There was a tension in her voice, a sense of urgency. She was like a totally different person than she'd been before.
ここでこのコンテナハウスだけでずっと生きていけばいいの。そうしてもらわないと困るんだ。
She needed me to do that? Wait, this was a delusion, right? Right? I don't know, man. I don't see the squiggles. And suddenly, a high-pitched sound stabbed my ears. It was like a girl's scream. Sounded more like a magic spell being cast. The wind blew hard. The air shook around me. Whoa. A crimson light blinded me. I turned toward the source of the light, unsure of what was going on. There, on top of the shipping crate, I looked up. Oh, she's still here. Hi! And saw Senna Aoi holding her D-sword in her hand. The light was coming from the flashing D-sword, but something was strange. The last time I saw it, Senna's D-sword had been flashing with a blue light. The sound quickly disappeared. The wind stopped.
答える。
I mean, a hello would be nice. A simple hello. You know, just... Oh god, computer. No, 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 not like this. Not like this. Okay. Her voice was sharp, her gaze was cold, I could see murder in her eyes.
これを書いたのお前か。
She was holding the essay with the IR2 equation scribbled on the back. It was all wrinkled, like someone had crumpled it up. Why would Senna have it? Why would she even be here? The words breaking and entering came to my mind, and I realized that she'd been in my room. Yeah. But why?
答えろと言っている。
そうだけど。だから。
たくみさん。
Now it was Kozuki's voice. Just like the serious level of this image went from like a 10 to like a 6. She was behind Senna's back. She was clinging to Senna's leg, poking her head out at me. Her expression was incredibly tense.
逃げるの。
Just as Kozuki shouted, Senna jumped. She raised the sword. Rumi yanked me hard, and I fell backwards. I looked up at the place where I'd just been standing. Senna's sword had torn a chunk out of the ground. Its sharpness and destructive power were almost unreal. The impact had been enough to shatter concrete, but the blade was unharmed. I thought the D-swords were supposed to be invisible, and you couldn't even touch them. She explained real booting to you, right? She explained the thing. He knows the thing. Is he... Okay. Then I remembered I need to actually read these things. Carry on before I jump in. Then I remembered what I'd heard before. The sword must have been real booting. The four of us here had a shared awareness of Senna's D-sword. It wasn't a delusion anymore. It was real. It was a huge sword with the power to cut someone in half. If Rimi hadn't pulled me back, the beautiful blade would have sliced into me head first, and I'd have died instantly. My whole body started to shake. Senna had just tried to kill me. Why? My mind was filled with questions. Not too long ago, she, Kozupi, and I had all been eating Garugari-kun popsicles together. We certainly weren't close enough that I could call her a friend, and she'd still scared me. But it certainly didn't feel like she was going to attack me on sight with a D-sword.
殺してやる
Why? Why, though? Senna looked up, glaring at me. She moved fast, even though she was carrying that huge weapon. She got into a crouch like a sprinter at a starting line and began to run. The tip of the blade tore into the ground as she got closer and closer, and when she was close enough, she raised it high above her head. My instincts told me in an instant what was going on. She was serious. Senna was serious. I was lying on the ground, staring up, helpless and pathetic. I screamed. I couldn't escape. Also, this music is very tense. They're like... I don't even know what instrument that is. This was just so unfair. So sudden. How could it suddenly be game over like this? All that time I'd spent running away from Shogun. Now I'd die to a surprise attack from Senna? No, I don't want to die. I don't want to die! And then, someone leapt between us, standing between me and Senna. I realized it was Rimi. She was standing between me and Senna with her arms spread out wide to block her path. Was she putting herself in danger to protect me?
どけ
Oh, Rimi, you'll die. I don't want that.
先畑さんには気をつけて。
Suddenly, I remembered what Kozupi had said before. Pale light began to pour out from between Rimi's spread arms. Oh shit.
先畑さんはよくわかんないのら。
Rimi.
タクに手を出さないで。
Brought her hands together around the streaming rays of light. The air shook around us. Shining feathers of light appeared from out of nowhere and began to dance around Rimi. And in her hands I saw... Senna had brought her huge D-sword down with full force, but she easily blocked it.
タクを追い詰めないで。
The thing in her hands was far too elegant, far too holy to be called a sword. I can't even tell what it is from this image. I literally can't see what it looks like. Is it like a ring? It was like the wings of an angel. I can't see it. I can't even really see it. And then I understood. She, Rimi Sakihara, was also a gigalomaniac. I can't... Oh, I see it. Yeah, it's like a ring. That's cool. Does she have another one in her other hand? I couldn't really tell. Does she got two of those? She does! That's sick. Oh, and they got like... Oh, okay, that's sick. I still think Senna's my favorite sword design, but that is cool. That is really cool. Senna Aoi was looking at her in sheer astonishment. The winged sword that had so easily blocked her own weapon was clearly a D-sword. And if she hadn't used it many times before, she wouldn't have been able to block Senna's attack so easily.
先畑さんもギガロマニアックスだったのら。
Kozue was looking down at them from on top of the shipping container, as if she was a spectator watching a game. Her legs were dangling off the side. That mental image is really funny. Senna was more than just a little annoyed at her behavior, considering how she just ruined her surprise attack. But her gaze was locked to her front, on Rimi. Rimi's expression was pained. Takumi Nishijo was lying on the ground behind her, moaning in shock. Senna was only after him. She wasn't here to fight Rimi. This wasn't a manga or an anime. It wasn't realistic at all to try to fight someone with a D sword.
その男が何をしたか知っているのか？ IR2 という公式を。
知ってるよ。
She cut Senna off. Her answer was calm and sad, but clearly spoken. When she heard this, Senna's grip on her blade tightened even further.
それなら
タクを覚醒させればもっと大変なことになる。
その前に殺す。
あなたには無理だよ。
Senna decided it wasn't worth trying to talk anymore. She brought her weapon lower, ready to strike with it. Rimi, however, was simply standing there. With long strides, she could be there in 5 steps. 3 seconds would be all it took. Senna didn't hesitate. She charged straight at Rimi. She slashed with her D-sword. Rimi tried to block it just as she did before, but it was a feint. Senna's oh my god! Senna's attack was a feint. I knew it. The blade passed through Rimi's sword and her body. She'd canceled the real boot. Right now, Senna's D-sword was just a delusion. It couldn't touch anything. It couldn't cut anything. It couldn't kill anyone. But that was just what Senna wanted. Rimi had been ready to block the blade and was caught off guard for an instant. By the time she'd figured out what happened, Senna had already slipped past her and was just 2 steps away from Takumi. That's actually genius. It's like galaxy brain. It only took an instant to do another reboot. Reboot. Real boot. Now, Takumi's terror-stricken eyes were pointed straight at Senna. It made the real boot easy. The D-sword, now real again, was only inches from piercing Takumi's heart.
Senna.
She saw someone in the corner of her vision. When she heard the voice, it stirred violent emotions within her. Her aim missed. And the blade only grazed Takumi's leg before slamming into the concrete next to him. Senna slowly looked up and gasped. A man was standing at the edge of the roof, the sun setting behind him, his countenance like a ghost. Oh, it's that guy. His face was pale and ashen. His eyes were bloodshot and sunk deep into his head. His head was slumped forward and expressionless. When she saw him, Senna stopped caring about Takumi at all. It was the man Senna had chased for so long, the man he hated. She hated. He didn't hate him. He is him. The man who'd abandoned her and betrayed her family. And now he was right in front of her.
ようやく見つけた。
Senna took a step toward him. She gritted her teeth to keep the hate welling up within her from taking control. She readied her D-sword again. She took another step.
どうしようもなかった。私はお前の母さんを生贄に捧げるしかなかったんだ。
黙れ。
母さんの最後、とても安らかなものだったよ。だからセナ、安心してほしい。母さんのおかげで素晴らしい実験結果が出た。母さんは世界のために役立ったんだ。お前も母さんの功績を誇っていい。
Boy, he just when I think he can't fit any more of his foot in his mouth, he just goes even further in. It's incredible.
黙れよ。
The blood rushed to Senna's head. The man was now all she could see. She ran. She got there in an instant. Senna closed the distance between them in the blink of an eye, and when she was close enough, stabbed the D-sword deep into his body. This had been Senna's most fervent wish. She'd spent every day wandering Shibuya just so she could someday kill him. She dreamed of killing him almost every night.
やっと母さんの敵を。
She tried to pull out the sword. She tried to back away from him. But the sword wouldn't come out. The man fell forward and embraced her.
よせ、気安く触るな。
All the hairs on her body stood up in revulsion. It was far too late for this. The bond between Senna and her father had long since been cut. But for some reason, she was shocked to find that she couldn't push him away. His warmth, his big broad chest, the reality of having her father here, right in front of her. Senna's hands were turning red. I was not expecting this to happen right now.
こんなの。
あなたが
望んだ妄想だ。
望んだ妄想だよ。
What the She heard whispering, and then she knew. Errors slipped into dead spots. Psychic attacks. Illusions. Her delusions had been read. By the time she realized what had happened, it was too late. She'd lost her balance, and both her and the man fell off the edge of the roof. Oh. The ground, 8 stories beneath her, seemed so far away. Huh. All I could do was watch without understanding at all what was going on. Senna suddenly ran toward the edge of the roof, and then, for no reason, lost her balance and began to fall. So who made that, is my question. Did Takumi make that on accident? No, because he would have to, like, know what he's making. So, did Shogun make that? Her body was just about to disappear off the edge.
落ちる。
Quick, Takumi, make another flower bed. All I could do was whisper. I closed my eyes tightly. Suicide. Senna was going to kill herself by throwing herself off the roof. I didn't know why. I didn't want to know. She'd attacked me for no reason. And now she'd been punished. She turned out to be an enemy too. But no matter how much I waited, I didn't hear the sound of her hitting the ground. Nervously, I opened my eyes to see what was going on. Senna hadn't fallen. She was slumped over. And Rimi was right next to her. Rimi was holding onto her arm. Had Rimi saved her? Senna had thrown away her D-sword and was crying like a little girl. What had just happened? As near as I could tell, Senna had just tried to kill herself.
辛い思いさせてごめんね。でもしょうがなかった。
Oh, she made that! What had Rimi done to Senna? I don't even know why I didn't even consider that. She was like a totally different person than the cheerful Rimi I knew. Her face was pained, her voice was sad, there were tears in her eyes. The girl in front of me wasn't the Rimi I knew. Got freaking Kozupi up here just like playing commentary. I heard a voice in my mind. Kozupi was still watching us from the top of the shipping crate.
もう終了だよね。もしもセナさんのことぐしゃばきってしようとしてるならカズピ許さないぽん。崎畑さんのことバラバラにしちゃうよ。
A cold chill ran down my spine. Kozupi was still using her cheerful anime voice, but I could tell she was serious. That kid scares me. She's definitely the scariest so far.
もう終わり。もともと葵さんのことどうこうするつもりはないし、タクの前から消えてくれるならこのまま解放する。それは無理。だってコズピーとセナさんとタクミちゃんはお友達だもん。
Oh yeah, besties. Total besties. I couldn't think about anything. If you'd told me everything that just happened was a dream, I'm sure I would have believed it. Why had Senna attacked me anyway? Was Senna my enemy after all?
お前のせいだ
Senna looked up at me, her face filled with tears. She was still slumped over, and she hadn't even tried to wipe away the tears. She was staring at me with anger in her eyes.
お前のせいで私の家族は
I was confused. I could feel her raw emotions. But what had I done? I never bothered anybody. I didn't even know Senna's family. I was completely harmless.
無害だと
She'd read my mind.
お前が生み出したものが世界を滅ぼすかもしれないっていうのに
How the they're giving me a lot of answers, but like the type of answers that don't give you actual answers. Like it's like, okay, that's the reason she's doing this, but what is the implication of the formula? I don't. I want to know. Destroy the world? Was she just another crazy person who'd read too much manga? I mean, at this point, Takumi, like. It's so funny how much of it he's willing to be like, yes, I think I understand the concept of real booting and these D-swords. And yet, on the other hand, he's like, oh, that chick is crazy. I turned to Rimi for help, but Rimi had her back to me and was looking out toward the evening sky.
無駄だよ
The way she looked, her voice, was it just me or did she seem so very, very sad?
だから何も知らないから
I also don't know anything. Could I? But it sounded like Rimi knew everything.
ふざけるな今渋谷を襲っている混乱は全部あの公式が発端なんだぞ
Formula.
それ以上言わないでタクは本当に何も知らないの
It felt like they were talking about me, but I couldn't follow the conversation at all.
公式ってこれのこと
Kozupi came down from her perch on the shipping crate, carrying my essay. On the back of it were the scribbles I'd done as a boy. I Arch. This was the cause of everything that was happening in Shibuya? Ridiculous. How could a bunch of scribblings on paper have that kind of power? I'd just drawn them to kill some time, I think. It was so long ago, I couldn't really remember, but they didn't mean anything at all. I'd just written down the numbers I'd seen in my dream. It was a dream that had something to do with the subject of my essay. Whose eyes were those? I'd used that phrase for a long time, and then one day I started to see it more and more clearly in my dreams. And in those dreams, I had seen the numbers.
FUN の10乗かける INT の40乗イコール IR2
Senna finally wiped away her tears. Her eyes were red. She kept talking, still slumped on the ground, looking at me with anger and frustration in her eyes.
この公式をお前が生み出した瞬間世界は分岐したんだ
What does that mean, though? What does that
ノア2に
mean,
搭載されている中で
though?
最も秀でているのは中核システムに組み込まれたとある方程式です。これは人類史上未だ回答が見つかっていないとされているもの。
ミレニアム7のうちの一つかね。
I don't know what that is. Tell me, oh great tips list. Another name for the Millennium Prize problems. 7 math problems announced by the American Clay Mathematics Institute in the year 2000. These 7 problems were all fiendishly difficult, unsolved questions in the field of mathematics, and anyone who answered one was to be given $1 million prize. As of 2007, only one of the 7 had been solved. I'm going to Google that later because that's very interesting. I'm going to learn more about that. The only Millennium 7 I'm familiar with are the Millennium items from Yu-Gi-Oh! I don't think that's mathematics related though.
億単位の懸賞金がかけられているという数学界で未だ未解決の7つの問題か。
いいえ、その7つの中には入っていません。ですが実はミレニアム7はもともと問題が8つあった。公開前に1つだけ削除されたのです。
それがノア2に組み込まれている方程式だと。
削除された理由は？
世界に最悪をまき散らす可能性があるためというところです。
一体どのような数式なのだ？
基本相互作用における電磁気力を想定した共鳴現象、それを表す計算式です。
The 4 forces that elementary particles exert on each other. They are the electromagnetic force, the weak nuclear force, the strong nuclear force, and the gravitational force. A theory that fully explains all elementary particles and the 4 forces has not yet been created. If it was ever to be found, it would completely explain the nature of our world from the smallest microscopic levels all the way up to the largest objects in the universe. I've not heard this term before, but that's very interesting. I like science.
これにより
I'm not good at it.
特定の電磁パルスと受容体とが近接作用することで発現する未知の力が解明されました。各国が30年以上かけて開発し積み上げてきた沈黙の兵器の研究成果を一瞬にして過去のものとしてしまったんですよ。
その問題に回答を見つけた者は神になるに等しいというわけだ。
それを君が果たしたというわけかね。
それはとても不思議な場所から見つかりました。子供の落書きというね。 IR2 ノア2のいわゆるハードウェア部分はこの公式によって神に匹敵する能力を手に入れました。あとはソフトウェア部分に相当するギガロマニアックスのコードサンプルを集めればノア2は本格的に稼働し我々の望むもの全てを実現してくれるでしょう。
かのアインシュタインが現代に生きていればと思うよ。彼は高い能力を持つギガロマニアックスだったと聞く。
I mean, we'll never know for sure now, will we?
家庭の話よりも現状がどうなっているかだ。ギガロマニアックスは世界中に数えるほどしかいないというではないか。大丈夫なのか？
すでに5人分のサンプルは確保しました。
ノア2稼働に十分な数は集まったようだね。
ならば結果を。
ただサンプルが多ければ多いほどノア2の能力は向上します。特にどうしてもサンプルを採取したいギガロマニアックスの少年が一人いましてね。
だからといって計画の遅延は許されんぞ。
ノア2の本格稼働はいつ頃になりそうなのかね。
稼働前に最終実験としてサードメルトを行います。
また地震を起こそうと？
Is that like a breakfast sandwich at Burger King or something?
予測規模は？
想定では関東大震災と同レベル。
関東大震災クラスだと？
マグニチュード 7.9 だったかな。
現在の建築基準と免震対策レベルを考えれば町にかつてほどの大きな損害を及ぼすことはないでしょ
う。だが犠牲者の数はファーストセカンドの日ではなかろう。
およそ5000人ほどといったところです。少なく見積もってですが問題が。
責任は貴様が取るのだろうな。
腹でも切って死んでみせますか？これが最終実験です。サードメルトが予定通りの成果を上げた時、ノア2は完全なる完成を見る。世界の可能性は我らの手の中に。
Huh.
この公式をお前が生み出した瞬間、世界は分岐したんだ。
Yo, what does that mean?
分岐って
Tell me. Explain it to me like I'm 5. Wait, this isn't an H game.
タク
Yeah, not that kind of split, dude.
もう行こう。話聞く必要なんてないよ。
Rimi grabbed me by the hand and tried to pull me into the room. I swear, Takumi, I want answers, and the only way I'm getting answers is if Takumi wants answers. So Takumi, want answers. I could sense her desperation. She was afraid of something.
葵さんが言ってることは全部嘘っぱちだし。
Oh, Takumi,
嘘は
please.
そっちだろ。
葵さん、もう帰って。タクの前から消えてよ。
Who was I supposed to believe?
たかが数式になんでそんなに目くじら立てるんだよ。
Yes, yes, ask questions, get answers.
本当に何も分かってないのか。アインシュタインが唱えた E イコール MC の事情、これが発表されたことで核兵器が開発されるという未来が生まれたように、お前の生み出した IR2 もまた E イコール MC の事情と同じ、いやそれ以上の影響力を世界に与えている。 IR2 は沈黙の兵器を現実のものとした。
沈黙の兵器。
思考盗撮、視覚投影、五感制御。
Those were the technologies that Senna had told me about before, the ones in the patent.
ギガロマニアックスは特別。いや、異常ではなくなる。これからはこの忌々しい力を誰もが自由に使えるようになるんだ。IR2 を元に作られた装置によってな。もっとも、その前に一握りの腐った連中に独占され、人々は気づかないうちに家畜同然の立場になるよう洗脳されてしまうだろうが。
I didn't know anything about all this. I had no idea. Even if what Senna said was true, I'd never meant to make anything like that. I was just a kid scribbling on paper. I hadn't done anything wrong.
それなら、そのアイアーム2は
Kozupi, it's one letter. How do you get one letter wrong?
IR2。
それはギガロマニアックスの力のことをキュッピーンって説明したものなんだ。やっぱりあのおじさんが言ってたのは本当だったのだ。一番重要なのはその目、誰の目を生み出した少年なんだって。それってたくみちゃんのコートだったんだね。
Kozupi's voice was cheerful, but I wasn't as innocent and pure as she was. Rimi said nothing. But Senna, her eyes wide, suddenly looked up and staggered to her feet. Why did she seem like she was having trouble walking? Was it because of whatever Rimi had done to her?
小杖、お前今なんて言った？
ホピ？
Senna began to storm toward a stunned Kozupi.
おじしゃんって誰のことだ？
ね、コズピーに理想度の大切さを教えてくれた人。東京に来て初めて話した人なの。なんかね、ふぎゅーって鼻つまみたくなっちゃう格好してて、へんてこなこと書いた板持ってたの。世界は終わる。 とかとか
なんでそれを早く言わなかった。
そんなこと言われても。
あいつだ。やっと見つけた。
Neither me nor Rimi nor Kozupi had any idea what she was talking about. All we could do was watch as an intense fury descended on her.
私はやっとあいつを殺せる。
I mean, I don't see how knowing that gets her any closer to finding him, but you know, an experiment had been performed, but she never knew. Oh. She was a normal housewife, close to turning 40, newly pregnant with her second child. No, maybe she wasn't quite normal. Her first hey, I'm trying to read here. Can somebody shut that kid up? I can't hear myself talk. Her first daughter was already only a year away from high school, so there would be an almost 15-year gap between her children. Wow, the kid actually... the timing on that. She was worried that her daughter, who was currently going through puberty, would rebel against having a younger sister, but in fact, her daughter was overjoyed. Her husband was a scientist. Between his faith and his research, only rarely came home. But whenever he was home, he did his best to be a good father and a good husband. So while she certainly had her complaints, her love for her husband was firm. The second child was born uneventfully. She was a healthy young girl who weighed 2,595... 2,579 grams at birth. She named the girl Mana. Unfortunately, after that, her husband was transferred to a new location far away from home. Her husband wouldn't last a week without someone to do the chores and make the food, so she had no choice but to send her older daughter along with him. She was now alone with her newborn daughter, Mana. At her husband's suggestion, the two of them moved into a housing owned by the company he worked for, so rent was extremely low. Her family had originally lived in a condo in the suburbs, but it was far from the city and hard to get anywhere. The dorm, however, was located right in the heart of Shibuya, and many of her husband's colleagues lived nearby. She'd have easy access to childcare, and if anything came up, she'd have people around who could help her. The place was extremely spacious. The bedroom, especially, was a favorite of hers. A huge mirror covered a whole wall, and on the other side there was a big window. From there, you could look down onto Yoyogi Park. Oh my god, this crying baby is... is searing my ears. She quickly became friends with the ladies in the nearby residences, and the corporate benefits even included a maid. She was proud that her husband was important enough in the company for her to have all these benefits, and was more than satisfied with her life of luxury. 2 years passed. Mana's development was a little slow, but she was growing up without suffering any major illnesses. She was, however, a very needy child. If she wasn't constantly held in her mother's breast, she'd start crying immediately. For the past month or so, Mana's mother hadn't been feeling well at all. The ringing in her ears was the worst part. I wonder why. Gosh, Jiminy Jillikers, I wonder why. It bothered her almost the whole day. But still, she couldn't let the maid or the lady next door take care of Mana. Mana couldn't stand to be away from her for a second. Not in the bathroom, not while taking a bath. Whenever she thought of letting the maid hold her for a second, Mana would somehow know and start crying. It was, in a way, endearing to have the young child so reliant on her, but it also meant that she couldn't leave the house for an instant. The maid and her neighbor, though, were there to help. She was so lucky to have met them. I'm just waiting for this to get super depressing. Of course, things were gradually getting strange with them, too. A week ago, she'd been talking with her neighbor. Oh, thank God the baby's done crying. She was talking with her neighbor in the living room when the woman had suddenly started to vomit without warning. She'd quickly fled afterwards, running out of the house. Mana's mother hadn't seen the neighbor at all after that, so perhaps she'd gotten sick. Mana's mother then decided to ask her maid to go check on the neighbor. The maid was just finishing up for the day when she'd made the request. When she'd finished it with, "And I'll see you tomorrow," the maid suddenly began to cry. The maid just nodded over and over again before leaving. Oh my god, no! No! And that night, Mana's mother suffered terribly as the ringing in her ears got even more violent than before, and the pain threatened to split her head open. She tried to call an ambulance, but the phones didn't work. She tried to get the neighbor lady to help, but even that was too difficult. Her daughter started to cry violently, and the crying made the pain worse. She held Mana tight to her chest, enduring the pain. Suddenly, the crying and the ringing in her ears stopped. The pain in her head was gone, like it had never even been there. She looked down and saw that she was holding the shriveled corpse of a child. Oh, good! Boy, it just goes from 0 to 10, huh? Alright. Before she realized that the whole thing was an experiment, her mind broke into a million pieces. Jesus fucking Christ! An experiment had been performed, but it wasn't what he had expected it to be. Oh hey, that helmet looks familiar. He was a scientist at Nozomi Technologies and a believer in the Cosmic Church of the Divine Light. He was one of the key figures behind Nozomi Tech's secret project Noah, and the one who'd solved the riddle of FUN to the 10th power times INT to the 40th power equals IR2. I'm sure there's a better way to say that mathematically. I don't know what it is. He had offered his pregnant wife as a test subject for the experiment. That's fucked up. Don't do that. It was a direct order from the church's leader, a person he admired deeply, but he had also been the one to suggest it to make the experiment a success. It was called the Mana experiment, after the codename given to his wife's daughter. Jesus Christ. His older daughter was given to a church facility where he monitored his sequestered wife and Mana 24 hours a day. What his wife had thought was a company-owned condo was, in fact, a Nozomi Technologies testing facility and the location of the Noah 2 prototype that he was working on. Mind reading, induced hallucinations, sensory control. His wife and daughter would be used to test the efficacy of these technologies here in the sealed lab. The effects of electromagnetic radiation on the body were ill understood, and he had planned to cancel the experiments if anything unusual happened to his wife and daughter. An accident occurred almost immediately. Mana died roughly a month after being born. The cause of her death was unknown. It was an accident, one that nobody could prevent. He was deeply saddened and tried to cancel the experiment, but that wasn't going to happen.
実に興味深いではないですか。
That's what his employer had said. The man had been looking at the strange goings-on in the test lab. His wife had refused to accept the reality of her daughter's death and treated her corpse like it was still alive. In fact, from his wife's perspective, she was. Oh my god. What? Holy shit. This was an effect of the Noah 2 prototype, and in a sense, the perfect chance to test its abilities. His feelings on the matter were irrelevant, and before long, he too began to feel that his wife would be better off if the experiment continued. As he watched his wife through the one-way mirror, cradling his daughter's corpse, it seemed like she was happy with her life. Alright, you know what? I'm gonna call it. This beats Pregnant Man. This officially is more upsetting and disgusting and disturbing than Pregnant Man. I'm calling it here. That's it. I really did. Up to this point, Pregnant Man was the most disturbing thing I had seen in this game. Boom. Here it is. This. Phew. Holy shit. She'd stare at the wallpaper on the opposite side, which looked to her like a window overlooking Yoyogi Park, and whisper softly to her daughter. Two of the research staff took care of her. One would pretend to be a maid, the other the lady next door. As long as the experiment continued, his wife's mind would be just fine. This was, he told himself, what was best for her. I mean, that explains why the lady next door randomly vomited. How could you not? Like, what the fuck? Perhaps his mind had broken before hers. And the more time passed, the more his goal changed from the completion of Noah 2 to keeping his wife locked within her dream. And then, after almost 2 years, his employer's words suddenly brought all that to an end.
データは十分取れました。ノア2本格稼働は間近です。この実験ももう続ける意味はないでしょう。
He fought back as hard as he could, but as a result, he was branded a traitor and removed from the project. As a final thanks for his services, he was allowed to be in the experiment room, hands tied, on the day it was shut down. His daughter, whom he hadn't seen for nearly 2 years, had been brought there as well. Oh good. Family reunion. When she saw him, she seemed confused.
父さん、これはどういうこと？母さんに何をしたの？母さんが抱いているのは一体。
He couldn't answer. The guilt kept him from even looking her in the eye. The horrible ceremony was about to begin. The neighbor lady had already become unable to tolerate the stench, and the maid had run out of the lab weeping at his wife's words. The device was shut down. The dream ended, and his wife broke. At the sight of her daughter suddenly turning into a desiccated corpse, at least that's how it must have seemed to her, she snapped, tearing out her hair and ripping the skin off her face with her nails. Oh my god. She began to laugh madly, slamming her face again and again into the walls, before grabbing a knife, killing herself by stabbing out her own eyes. God. The daughter was screaming and crying as she watched her mother's last moments through the one-way mirror. The lab staff grabbed his daughter by the arms and dragged her off somewhere. He didn't know where. He wasn't even allowed to follow the only family he had left. Why did they bring her there? Like, what sick, like, sadistic motherfucker was like, yeah, let's bring the kid to watch this and then take her away. What was the point of that? Like, I get why they did it to the dad. Like, he was being punished for being a traitor. Why did they bring? Oh, vile. This is vile. He blamed himself. It was all his fault. Yes, it was. Correct. Whatever his reasons, when he opted to continue the experiment 2 years prior, it had been obvious that this was how it was going to end. I mean, I'd even say before that. I'd even say when you offer anyone, really anyone, to be a unwitting participant in any sort of experiment that involves their life, maybe you're a bad person. Maybe you're just a really bad person. This is my take on it. Several days after watching his wife's death, he disappeared. Nobody knew where he was now. Holy shit. That was awful. That was the worst thing. That was definitely the worst thing so far. Holy fuck. Oh my god. Alright. Senna had ended up running off on her own, after angrily asking Kozupi some kind of question. Kozupi had gone after Senna. I had no idea what made her suddenly go crazy. Now I was so slowly trudging through Shimokitazawa. I was almost home. It wasn't even 30 minutes from the base. Was Nanami there? Shimokitazawa's streets were busy, though not as busy as Shibuya. The Psychic Boy incident was still fresh in people's memories. Some would point and laugh at me, while others would take pictures with their cell phones. I hurried home as fast as I could, suffering through the feelings of embarrassment and humiliation.
ごめんね。
Rimi was walking a little behind me, her eyes locked on the ground below her as she whispered. She'd said that at least 10 times on the way here.
黙ってて。ごめん。
There was nothing I could say. I didn't understand Rimi. That had always been the case. Rimi had been there to support me. She's been there for me. But there was so much about her I didn't understand. Until now, I'd always opted to just ignore it. Maybe that was because it felt like if any of those things I didn't understand ever came out in the open, Rimi would go away. And I was afraid of that.
どうして僕と一緒にいてくれるの？
I managed to work up the courage to ask that single question. Why would Rimi want to be anywhere near a guy like me? Was it because she was like Yua and trying to set me up for a fall? But the answer wasn't what I expected.
あなたに目覚めてほしくないの。普通の生活を送ってほしかった。
She didn't want me to wake up? To awaken as a gigalomaniac? Is that what she meant? Rimi knew more about me than I did myself.
一体君は何者なの？
私は
Rimi hesitated.
私はタクの友達だって思ってる。友達でいたいな。
Did that mean she didn't want me to ask any more questions? But I had to ask. Yes, Takumi, ask questions. Ask more questions.
僕は
Because
ギガ
I
ロマ
need
ニアックスなの。
answers.
そうとも言えるし、違うとも言える。
Which was it? Was she trying to confuse me?
君は IR2 のこと知ってたの？
聞いたことがあるだけ。
She didn't say who'd told her about it.
セナが言ってたのは本当なの？
嘘だよ。
She was lying. She was lying when she said it was a lie. I could tell just by looking at her.
君は
I went to ask her another question, but stopped. Was Rimi on my side or my enemy? If I asked and got the wrong answer, she might leave me forever, so I couldn't ask. If I just pretended nothing had happened, if I just let her lie to me, everything could go back to how it was before. That'd be easier. I'd be way happier that way, maybe. Yeah, I should just do that. No, don't do that! I could just pretend to be an idiot. I could just let her keep lying to me. She'd saved me enough times that she probably wasn't going to hurt me in the future. All I had to do was give her what she wanted and lead a normal life.
ありがとう。
I looked away from her and thanked her instead of asking her a question.
守ってくれて。
タク、
Couldn't think of anything else to say, so I just silently followed the path home. Soon, I came to a street I recognized. It was in a cramped, quiet neighborhood. Once in a while, you could hear the sound of the trains in the distance. I'd known this place since I was a little kid. This was where I'd grown up. I'd followed the same road to elementary school and to middle school. I just had to turn down the narrow street in front of me, and home would be right here. Right there. There, not here. Hair. Hair? Oh. My brain is melted. I was scared to face Nanami, but I had to see whether her arm was still attached. I stopped and took a deep breath to calm myself. Then I went to take a step forward when...
待って。
I turned back to see that Rimi was looking at me. She was on the verge of tears.
どうしても行くの？
Does Rimi know why he's here? Like, I know he said he wanted to go home, but did he mention the whole thing with Nanami and her hand?
ねえ、
And the possibility of it not being there? Okay, she definitely seems to know, so
もう
She probably
普
knows.
通じゃいられなくなるよ。私そんなの嫌だな。
What did that mean? Honestly, I'd say we're well past that. Like, I don't... maybe Takumi's more, like... maybe he's just stronger than me, but, like, at this point, if I'd experienced this up to this point, there ain't no going back. There ain't no being like, all right, you know what, screw all this. I'm just gonna forget it happened and go back to my day-to-day. No! You either keep going or you go insane. One or the other.
帰ろう。あのコンテナハウスに帰ろう。私タクが望む限りずっと一緒にいるから。それで一緒に学校に行って大臣と3人で他愛もない話をして、帰りに立ち食いそば屋さんとか CD ショップとかに寄って、そうやってこれからもやっていこうよ。
僕はナナミに会わなくちゃ。
いないよ、きっと。
How would she know? Was she lying again? Was there a reason she didn't want me to going to my parents' house?
私タクの悲しむ顔見たくない。
Not again.
もう謎かけみたいなことはやめてよ。
I was just sick of it all. Was I supposed to just never understand what's going on around me? That does seem to be what she wants, yes. I couldn't keep playing dumb, even if I wanted to. Everybody just kept throwing mysteries in my face. I just wanted to remain ignorant.
実家に行っちゃいけない理由があるなら言ってよ。こんな中途半端なのうんざりなんだ。
Sick of it? I was the only one who'd always decided to do things halfway, wasn't I? I was the one who'd run away from things. That's right. I should just keep doing what I've always been doing. I should just go home. Rimi was right. I didn't need to see Nanami. No! Takumi! If I went to see her and she was missing her right hand, what was I even supposed to do about it? It'd be my fault, wouldn't it? Nanami would hate me. She'd despise me. I'd be the loser who couldn't save his little sister. I'd know for sure just how pathetic I was. If I kept everything vague and uncertain, I wouldn't feel guilty. Oh, Takumi, please. Yeah, I should just do that. That was the best move. Don't look at anything. No matter how many mysteries people shoved in my face, I could just ignore them all. I could hide myself away from the world.
ほんと世話が焼けるな。ナナがいないと何にもできないんだから。
ダメだ。
In my head, I heard Nanami's bright, cheerful voice.
ダメだよ。
If I ran away here, I'd never be able to face an enemy again. I'd never be able to come here again.
タク
I clenched my fists and stepped into the narrow street that led to my old home. It was less than 50 meters away. Yes. Yes. At first, my pace was brisk. Then I ran. I headed toward the home where I'd grown up. 30 meters. 20 meters. 10 meters. 0 meters. And the house I knew so well wasn't there.
あれ
The name on the plate was different. It didn't say Nishijo. The house looked different too. It was much nicer, much newer than the house I'd lived in. Oh my god. This poor kid. I looked around. I thought maybe I'd just stopped at the wrong house. But I was wrong. And besides that, nothing around me matched what I remembered. I thought for a moment that maybe I'd gotten lost or gone down the wrong street, but that was impossible. Everything on the way here had been just as I remembered it. The path here was the same. But my home wasn't here. I'd followed the path in my memories, but what I remembered being here wasn't here at all. Instead, it was something else. I was seeing something new. I should know this place well, but it was like I was coming here for the first time.
シャメビューだ。
Show me
うよ。
Rimi was standing right behind me. Her words were an instant rejection.
この世界に
Oh my god, is he like, did he like grow up in a lab or something like that?
ないの。
And like, oh, like he never had a home. Is that what this is? He never actually had a house. He just like his memories were. The light from the setting sun fell into the hospital hallway. This time of day was particularly dark. It was just before night fell, and the lights hadn't been turned on yet. The chaos and noise of dinner time had subsided, and an almost eerie silence descended in its place. Shogun was slowly moving down the hallway in his wheelchair. The sound of the creaking wheels echoed throughout the corridor. He passed several nurses on the way, but none of them looked at him or spoke. Shogun, for his part, didn't seem to find this unusual at all. Frail hands, seemingly made of nothing but skin and bones, turned the wheels again and again. As he passed one of the... I know it shouldn't be funny, but... that guy again. Familiarity, you know. A patient named Yamai began to scream. He pointed at Shogun, shouting frantically. Oh. There happened to be a nurse in his room. She looked terribly confused.
誰もいませんよ。
The nurse looked around and chuckled. Shogun was right in front of her with his wheelchair, but still, she said nobody was there.
また山井さんは私のことからかってるんでしょう。でも今日は騙されませんからね。
アミーちゃん、ラウミーちゃん、タウミーちゃん。
I know it's not funny, but it's kind of funny. Yamai kept screaming and getting angrier and angrier. Shogun ignored him and continued down the hallway, turning right. Yeah. The cream-colored wall suddenly became black. Shogun didn't hesitate for even a moment before the wall. He kept going forward, and just before it seemed like he would hit it, the wall vanished. It simply disappeared and revealed the hallway behind it. Shogun kept going forward. The hallway went on for about 20 more meters before ending, this time for real. A single room. There was a single door which opened into a room. Shogun opened the door and went inside. It was a room that didn't exist. The one that there'd been rumors and ghost stories about in the hospital for years. And the name on the plate outside the door was... oh my god, Takumi Nishijou. Oh my god! Okay. Gigglomaniac. Alright, I gotta go. Oh my god. Alright. Yep, I gotta go. I'm done. I'm out. Brain recovery time. See you later. Bye-bye.